Hi everyone, it is Brian here at Briden Farm, and I just need to take a moment to set this up. Maybe we have too many websites. the I'm hoping that if he is able to join us, I believe I have a guest who may be coming on Fireside Chat this evening, and I'm hoping that that's going to happen. But in the meantime, I am just going to take a couple last minute things here, and I'm actually loading the tabs on my, I can't even say antiquated, I want to say antiquated laptop. To be honest, it's only 2 years old. I have not really been happy with it from day one. I should have sent it back. But not a person that sends things back, even when I should, probably. Having said that, I'm just kind of, to be honest, I'm stalling a little bit to give the people over on Wisdom a chance to show up if they want to as well. Because I use my iPad, and unfortunately, people on Wisdom are not able to hear the guest speakers over on Fireside. So if you want, Fireside Chat is where you can actually catch the broadcast. I believe it is, let me see if I can find it, firesidechat.com / isn't everything a / these days, / growing your family tree. And that is where you can find us right now for our live broadcast. And if you like, you can even join the conversation over there. And if you're on Wisdom, you can hit join the conversation button. So when I say that I like to help you get started for free, I actually mean a couple of things by that. The main thing is, the old saying, you can give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. You teach him to fish, and he can feed himself for a lifetime. So, one of the things that I do on these talks is to show you or tell you how to do it yourself, because then you gain your independence. And where I suggest you start, once you've, of course, talked to your friends and family, and maybe even before that, go to legacyfamilytree.com and download the standard edition of their database, which is going to allow you to have a place, and it resides on your computer. So it's it's not even that the information is shared per se. It is family tree, legacyfamilytree.com. It's a database that I've used pretty much from the beginning. My first 10 years, I just used the free download, which is what I'm suggesting you do. I don't believe in investing a lot of money into something unnecessarily and or at all, depending on what it is. But go to legacyfamilytree.com. Get your database, get the free download, and you can start and enter your name, your parents' names, any grandparents' names that you know. When you're using that program, it has a place for you to put notes. It has a place for you to enter names and put notes. And it is a great tool, even if you never upgraded. But the upgrade, when I did it like 20 years ago, I think it was around $20, and now I think it's maybe 35, and that's not monthly. It's not exactly a one-time thing, because if they come out with a new version, which they do every year or two, you may want to upgrade it if you do have the paid edition. And I mean, it's definitely worth doing. They used to have an affiliate link for that, and they kind of changed things a few years back, and they don't do that anymore. So I don't even earn anything if you decide to do the upgrade. So it's not like I'm trying to sell you something. The Faraz, welcome to our Growing Your Family Tree talk. I generally invite my guests to speak, so I'm going to send you an invitation. Don't feel that you have to, but you're welcome to. If you have any questions about growing your family tree, about finding family or ancestry, and I can help you, that is what I'm here for. Because as I started out my talk, I began by saying I believe in teaching a person to fish rather than just giving them a fish. So I suggest going to legacyfamilytree.com and get your free database where you can enter your name, parents' names, grandparents' names if you have them, and talk to family, gather information, all the information that you can. And then the first website that I kind of suggest going to is familysearch.org. And familysearch.org is, I want to scroll down to the bottom of their website and read it the way that it's worded. A service provided by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, I do not belong to the Latter-day Saints, but I am thankful for their website, because they have done and do on an ongoing basis a ton of research and a ton of work, and there is massive amounts of information on there. What I do suggest that you do is actually two things. I'm going to start a little bit different than what I normally do, because I'm going to suggest that for the website, and that doesn't mean that you have to join the church, for the website, get your free membership, because by logging in, it allows you to actually access the actual records, not just the search results, if that makes sense. So if it's a census record and you're logged into your free account on familysearch.org, that actually gives you the ability to see the actual census record. Now, on familysearch.org, at the top of the page, click search and then click records. And I'm going to give you a little warning, and it's not a warning about family search per se, because I would say it about MyHeritage or Ancestry or anything where you have hints that take you to someone else's tree. And it's just a word of caution, because those trees that those hints lead you to, those trees are only as good as the source that the information was gathered from. Because what happens sometimes is the person, in their eagerness to find their ancestry, sees a hint and they copy all that information over to their tree. And they don't take time to see if there was an actual source. And what I mean by a source is a census record, a military record, a birth, marriage, or death record, some type of actual source material associated with the information. And the other thing I very much encourage you to do, because I didn't do this in the beginning, is source your information as you go. And what I mean by that is, if you find information, let's say on a grandfather or grandmother, and you enter them into your database, the free database that you got from legacyfamilytree.com, be sure to enter the source. Note where you got that information from, because we all get excited when we find something new. We all get in a rush in our excitement, and we think, oh, I can go back to that later. And you're not always able to find the information later. Just trust me on that one. There are times that you just wish later that you had gotten the information recorded, that you recorded your source when you were doing your work. Hey, Gabriel. Hope I pronounced that right. Welcome to our Growing Your Family Tree talk. I always invite people to ask questions, and so I will send you an invitation to speak. Don't feel that you have to. You're welcome to hang around either way. What I do on our Growing Your Family Tree talk is I help people learn how to do their own research. I also, for those who want to join the conversation, can help in some cases you find family or ancestry. If you're just getting started, I can give you some pointers. If you've been researching for a while and maybe come up with what we refer to as a brick wall, an ancestor whose parents we just can't seem to find, I've been researching for 30 years. Sometimes I can help. Sometimes it just takes longer. What I have found in my own research is sometimes, generally, usually, when the timing is right, that information comes. And sometimes I can find it, and sometimes I can't, and sometimes it's 5 years down the road. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. This is my girl Tigray. Been sitting on Dad and taking your bath, so you know what? Why don't you jump down for now? Because all people can see is your back, and they're wondering, who the heck is that? Yeah. So where I suggest you get started is at legacyfamilytree.com, because there's a free database there. Their standard edition gives you a free download. So it's legacyfamilytree.com. And then go over to, I always encourage people to talk to their family first, enter that information into your free database. I always encourage people to go to their family and ask questions. If you don't perhaps have a grandparent, talk to somebody who might have known them. And the first website after you get your free database from legacyfamilytree.com, the first website I suggest going to is familysearch.org, because they have a ton of information. When you're there, click on search and then records, and then enter a name. Now, if anyone on Fireside or over on the Wisdom app does have someone who they would like for me to look for, family or an ancestor, grandparent, great grandparent, maybe, let me know. Join the conversation, and I can look for that right now, because I have it open to where I can do that. I'm going to try looking on Family Search for one of my brick wall ancestors. And what I mean by that is, we've never successfully been able to find his parents. And to be honest, I don't expect to be able to find them in the moment. I'd rather, if someone is listening on Wisdom or on Fireside, I'd rather look for your information and help you out. Keeps it fresh and interesting for me, and I like to see if I can help. And it's on the show, especially right now, it's free. So if you have a question, you're looking for family or ancestry, join the conversation, and I will do my best to find that for you. But my ancestor, Simon Kavanagh, now is believed to have been born in Ireland in the late 1700s. I could look it up, but I'm going to guesstimate that he was born between 1790, because the search function allows me to do that, and 1799. Now, I really have no reason to doubt that he was born in Ireland, but I have nothing concrete to prove that he was born in Ireland. And so that is a little bit of a pain after 30 years of research, not being able to find that. I do have some unexplained DNA cousin matches, however, and that makes things interesting, because it makes me wonder, I wonder if that could be through Simon. Now, my original home area was Yarmouth County, Nova Scotia, and an old researcher from back in, I'm going to say, the early days, was George Brown, and he recorded him as being Samuel or Simon Kavanaugh, and could be either one. So one of the first things that I find when I look here at Family Search and I put in Simon Kavanaugh's name, birth date 1790 to 1799, is a marriage record, not for them, not for Simon Kavanaugh, who actually married Sarah Hurlbert, but for a daughter, Lila C. Gowdy. And if I look at that, it says that they were married. Let me scroll down and look. 20th of October 1904. Now, because we know that Lila was the daughter of Simon Kavanaugh and Sarah, and I'll fill in the blank on that one on the page that says Simon Kavanaugh and Sarah Kavanaugh. Sarah was actually a Hurlbert, which is also my last name. But because her father was Simon Kavanaugh and she had been, and on this marriage record, Lila is a Gowdy, we know a couple of things already. Lila, or Lilia, was previously married because she was first a Kavanaugh and then became a Gowdy. And in 1904, 20th of October 1904, in Gableton, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, she married Isaac White. But because of that, we know that she was previously married to a Gowdy. Now, the other thing is on FamilySearch.org, be sure to get the free website membership. Now, that doesn't involve you joining the Latter-day Saints. And again, I'm not a member. I've used their website for a number of years. Very thankful that the website is there. Get the free website membership because not only does it allow you to do the search, and you can do the search regardless of membership or not, but it allows you to look at the actual document in most cases. And trying to bring up this actual document, because even though we know if her father was working on an old laptop too, one of these days maybe I'll get a new laptop, something a little quicker. But not only do we know that she was previously married to a Gowdy, if her last name on this marriage record is Gowdy and her father's listed as Kavanaugh, but when we look, so she was 58 at the time, and her husband, Isaac White, was 65. They were both marked in the marriage column. And double check. I know I'm looking at the marriage column, but always double check your own work too. And it makes me chuckle because it doesn't exactly say, were they married or not. It says condition. And so on that column, you'll see B, you'll see B's, you'll see S's, and you'll see W's. Bachelors, spinsters, and widows or widowers. And for Isaac, White and Lila or Lilia Gowdy, who we know is actually Lilia Kavanaugh, they're both listed with a W, which means that they were both widowed, a widower and a widow. The other thing that we see is that they is where they're living. And if we look at that, Lilia was actually residing in Lynn, Massachusetts when they got married. So that would give us another place to look for information for her. Then if we go over further, it shows they were both born in Gableton. The Isaac's parents are listed as David and Lydia, and Simon and Sarah listed as her parents. Now, sometimes on some marriage records, it will tell you where the parent was born. And so then that would direct us to that location to search for the parents' information. And again, if there's anyone on the Wisdom app or on Fireside who would like me to look for someone for you, please click join the conversation button or request to come up to the mic on Fireside. So that'll give you an idea of the type of information that is available on FamilySearch.org. And very thankful for those who have spent time putting that information together, providing this website. Absolutely beneficial to many researchers. And being able to get the free membership for that website and actually look at the actual documents, knowing that you have properly sourced the information, it is, I'm going to say it's a beautiful thing. It sounds a little corny, but it's a beautiful thing. Now, the other thing that is the other website where you can go and find free information and where you may find information on a more recently departed person is findagrave.com. And I actually, last week, I come across someone whose record was on there. They have 226 million memorials, headstones. And on there as well are not only the headstones, but a lot of them contain obituary information. And obituaries often provide additional information, like brothers, sisters, parents, sometimes grandparents. I'm trying to look on Find a Grave right now for William Kavanaugh, and I've got my database there. I can look and find it, but I just kind of want to do this the rough way, shall we say. And so I'm looking for William Kavanaugh in Nova Scotia on findagrave.com. And William Kavanaugh, and that can be spelled with a K or a C, by the way, Kavanaughh or C. He was my great grandfather, and on here, for some reason, it doesn't seem to come up. Now, what that probably means is his headstone simply hasn't been added on there yet. Mind you, there are 5 other ones that are there. So I'm curious now to see if I can bring this up. I'm going to see if I can look actually in my database, tell you to go get your database and sit with mine open and then wonder what when William died. If I can speak. He died in 1905. Now, I actually know where he was buried. I don't know if there's a memorial, if the stone is on, if there's a memorial on Find a Grave or not for him. So I'm going to enter in, I'm going to refine this a little bit, William Kavanaugh, death year, 1905, with a 5-year spread, because sometimes things get not stretched out of truth, but stretched out of proportion when they're recorded on websites. We all make mistakes. And I don't see him. It kind of surprises me because I know where he's buried, and I actually thought I had seen it on here before, but I'm not seeing it on here now. And of course, that's probably because I'm in the middle of a live talk. But William Kavanaugh, he was actually the son of Simon Kavanaugh and Sarah Hurlbert that I looked for earlier. So now he won't be there, but the other place where you could look for information on someone who has died recently, and I'm going to kind of ballpark that in the last 5 to 10 years. Sometimes you can find them a little bit further back, and I'm actually just going to use my last name. Normally I would put in a person's name, but I'm going to put in Obit and Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. And so actually I'm not even going to put in my last name. I'm just going to see what comes up because I know that we'll get a result. And I really just want to look at an obituary that hopefully will be a good obituary and give you an example of the information that is found in obituaries. And I get all kinds of other websites. That doesn't mean that they're not good too, but all kinds of other websites out there. Recent obituaries. So this actually takes me to a website called tributearchive.com. Now again, I didn't put in a name. Let's say it's 5 or 10 years down the road and you want to see if I had an obituary. Hopefully it won't be there then. Not yet. But if you put in obit, Brian Hurlbert, especially if you had the Yarmouth County, Nova Scotia, or Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, that would bring up information. And on that, there would hopefully be additional family information. Now this, when I didn't put in any name, it just showed me a number of websites. And what they do is, most of them, now it's interesting because this one I don't actually see ads on, which is surprising, but most of them list ads, and often Google ads, and they get um, they get paid. Affiliate links, in other words. But this tributearchive.com, which come up, shows recent obituaries in the Yarmouth area, because I just put obit Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Might say I'm checking on the people at home and seeing who's still around. The kind of like in the olden days, when people used to get up in the morning and open the newspaper and go to the obituaries to see if they were still alive, or perhaps to see who in the area was still alive or not. So this one that I picked, is actually she died young. Is for Ina Gail Nickerson in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, born the 23rd of April 1964 and died the 3rd of April 2023. Now the reason that I picked her, if you were looking for someone who had recently passed but you didn't know who their parents were, what their ancestry was. Hi Vanessa. I always invite everyone to come up and speak, and if there is anyone who you don't feel that you have to, but if there is anyone that you would like for me to look for, whether that's a family member or ancestry, please do. I'd be glad to help you with that. I think she was shy. She jumped right out. The actually probably didn't even mean to come into the talk. I know sometimes when I turn on Fireside, it automatically takes me to talks, and it's just like, yeah, really? Anyway, almost wish I had like a static landing page, and then you could pick the talks. Anyway, I digress. So Ina Gail Nickerson, age 58, of Nikhil Home for Special Care, which I know is a senior's home. She was the daughter to Frida Nickerson Mullen and the late Edward Mullen. Now, I'm curious because it's the area that I come from, and the family names, Nickerson and Mullen, are both already in my database. It kind of makes me wonder if she's not in my database, if perhaps her parents, one or the other, are in my database. And so when you're doing that, have your database open. Legacyfamilytree.com, free database. And I actually do have one, Edward Mullen. So I'm gonna look and see. Now his parents were born in 1886 and 1900. So there's a possibility that this Edward Mullen may be. Now, if you are doing research, and so here's another place, that you can do research online for free. Most states and provinces, just give me a moment. I see that someone over on Wisdom may be looking for information. I'll bring them up and see who it is. And it is Curtis James. How are you doing? Thank you, Kurt. I, I appreciate that. I also have a guest in the audience over on Fireside, and that's great. And as you know, because I sent you a message letting you know, I locked myself out of my login for Fireside, and finally I got in contact with support today, and this is interesting um, for anybody listening. This is very interesting information that they sent back to me, and it doesn't pertain just to Fireside. It also pertains to anybody who basically is using probably an iPhone or an Apple device or like myself, an iPad. Um, if you use iMessenger and it's on, it sort of overrides text messages from your carrier, from your phone company. And what was happening is I wasn't getting my text code from Fireside so that I could enter it so I could log in. And so as soon as I went over to took the advice from the support at Fireside and went and turned off my iMessenger on my iPad and then entered my phone number to get them to send me the text, there it was. And so after that, I was able to log in, but I had to turn off the iMessenger in order to do that. Right? I just some Curdy, I know you'll understand this. Um, I just want so I'm talking to Curdy at the moment over on Wisdom. Now I know because I'm using my iPad, and I know Curdy will understand this. Who's a good friend over there, good friend period. Now, the when I'm talking to somebody on Fireside, the person listening on Wisdom doesn't hear my guest on Fireside. So I have someone in the audience. Thank you for sticking around. Uh, and I'm wondering if my person on Fireside can hear you, or if they're just hearing a whole lot of silence. So, right, right, all right, yeah. If you can, just because, right? All right, good. Curdy's going to come over and join us that way, right? Right. Okay. Thanks, Curdy. I appreciate you. And if there is anybody over on Wisdom still that does have questions, please do feel free to join the conversation. Um, the Because I can kind of work around it. But yeah, it's far more interactive for these purposes to for us to be on the Fireside broadcast, and that's not a knock on Wisdom. I love Wisdom, but um, so I was looking at this obituary for Gail Nickerson. Now, the other website that I was going to suggest, especially if you're looking for ancestry in Nova Scotia, is Nova Scotia genealogy.com, which is the provincial records. Unfortunately, you would think I'd have it on my mind after 30 years of doing research. I don't. There are gaps because from roughly 1870 to almost 1910, the province did not require people to submit vital records, like to report their birth, marriage, and death. So there's gaps in there, but most places, I want to say most places, most provinces and states, not all, but most of them do have an online database now where they can where they record, where we can access, is what I'm trying to say. So I had looked at Ina Gale Nickerson, who died at 58 and just died April 3rd. And sometimes when we're doing our research, I almost want to be gentle because because this is such a recent obituary, but it's a good example. When we look at that and we see that her parents were Frida Nickerson and actually, so this is why you should always read closely, and the late Edward Mullen. So her dad is gone too, and I don't know how long ago, but before I go to Nova Scotia genealogy, I'm going to open Google again and look for, and it doesn't mean that he's getting feedback there, Curdy.
Hey, sorry, I just realized I had the wisdom up and I was like echoing.
No worries.
And I had to turn the light on because I was in darkness. So
So I'm going to look and see if I can find an obit for Ina's dad, because we don't know how long ago he passed. But if it was recently, or within the last few years, I'm just going to put Nova Scotia in for a place. Because I actually think that this may be the Edward Mullen that I actually already have in my database. But on Google, it may be there, but I'm not readily seeing his obituary. But the other thing that you can do sometimes that is interesting, from Ina's obituary, we also know that her mother was Frida Nickerson. So on Google, obit Edward Mullen and Frida Nickerson. And by the way, Curdy, thank you for it's going to sound bad, it can sound funny, but thank you for thanking me for doing this.
yeah,
Because sometimes when we're doing this type of thing, it gets a little
my modern day hippies brand. So
right. That's okay. That's like 11 days, right? The 21st.
22nd's my birthday. Yeah,
22nd is your birthday, and that's when we're doing the modern day hippies.
as long as I was having a very challenging day today, but yeah, that's my intention. So for sure,
I hear you. So by putting in her parents' names, by going to Google and searching for obit Edward Mullen and Frida Nickerson, Nova Scotia. The only one that I'm actually seeing coming up is Ina's obituary. It may have triggered her father's obituary to come up, or another sibling if there had been one. So because we're not seeing it there, I'm going to go to Nova Scotia genealogy. What did it comes up when Nova Scotia genealogy.com, and I'm going to put in Ed. Okay, so it jumped. Ed Mullen. Now, we know that he was most likely, not necessarily, never assume. We know that if Ina was born in 1964, and she was the daughter of Frida Nickerson and Edward Mullen, then we kind of assume that they were probably married before 1964. Now, in order to find a marriage record in Nova Scotia genealogy, it has to be at least 75 years ago, so they may not, it may not show up there. And I'm going to narrow it down because you can narrow it down now to births, marriages, or deaths. And so we're looking for a marriage record for her parents, who were Edward Mullen and Frida Nickerson. And I see an earlier one for an Edward Mullen, because Edward Mullen, was probably a name that was passed down. So I'm not seeing that, but the other place that if I wanted to, I could go back to is go back to familysearch.org and enter the information. In fact, I'll do that, familysearch.org. And this is the way that I would search for that record, because I really don't know when they were married. So what I would do, to my laptop time to catch up, someday I will have a new one. Yeah. Familysearch.org. Again, free website. Search. I'm going to do records because that brings up if there's a marriage record. Because if they weren't married in Nova Scotia, it may bring it up. Like, let's say, for example, they were over in Massachusetts. That wouldn't show up on the provincial Nova Scotia genealogy.com, but it may show up on familysearch.org, which is taking forever to come up. I swear, if Murphy's Law is going to happen, it is during a live talk. It just
I was just curious how the piglets were doing.
Oh, the Briden Farm piglets, which are 5 days old today. Gabriel, if you want to, if you're interested in such things, we have a homesteading farm in Bear River, Nova Scotia, and it's Briden, Briden farm.com. And there's some posts over there and videos over there, the little piglets bouncing around. So, natural birth. We did not crate her, did not cage her, total natural birth. First time ever having piglets. And she had 8 piglets, all healthy. 5 days later, none of them crushed. Like, best mom ever. Yeah, she's pretty pleased with her, and we've kind of already decided that, and there's one particular one that we're hoping is a female. Haven't checked yet. Don't want to stress mom out. But we there's one that is kind of light colored, I would say off-white. The mother's a Berkshire pig, which is a black pig with white feet and some white around her snout. The father is a Mangalisa, which is a kind of a curly-haired redhead. the and the piglets are multicolored, but there's one light-colored one that has polka dots.
Yeah, I
And
saw that. Yeah.
if that is a little female, I think Dot probably, you know, it's going to be sticking around. We'll maybe look to have some piglets with her next year. So
Right.
get back to what we're doing here.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to distract you.
No, it's great.
Well, hey, I gotta drop down. It's
Okay. Take
9 o'clock.
care of you, my friend.
Yeah, and then because I gotta do my affirmations for Graciela.
Right on.
And thanks for bringing me up. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Curdy.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Yep. You too.
And if there is anyone else who's listening over on the Wisdom app, if you'd like to join the conversation, hit join the conversation button.
Oh, plus I have to charge my phone up, so I have like 10%. So
Right on.
all right, see you, bro.
Okay, have a good night.
You too.
So let's see what if anything we found here on Edward Mullen and Frida Nickerson, and it's not coming up. So there's one of those things that I was referring to earlier that, sometimes when things are meant to be, they appear, and when they're ready to be found, we find them, and other times it's just a matter of having to wait. There's not much else we can do about it. Now, reading on Ina's obituary, daughter to Frida Nickerson and the late Edward Mullen. Ina was a hard worker working at Sobeys, which is a local grocery store, for a number of years. She was very determined, would strive to be the best at all she accomplished. She was a loving mother, grandmother, and friend. In her spare time, she enjoyed crafting and making jewelry. She would donate all the proceeds to different charities, um, survived by her daughters, and it mentions those in the obituary. And so, in that case, if we were looking for family member as compared to ancestry, sometimes if we've got our DNA done and we've had a cousin match, and we might not know too much more about our family, but we can pick those names out and then go to Google and then use it as a tool to put in the short form of obituaries, a obit in a person's name, maybe a parent or grandparent of the cousin match. Then it kind of helps to triangulate that to find somebody in the family. I'm not going to bother reading all of Ina's children's names for two reasons, maybe three. One is I'm being a little bit lazy. The more important reason is she just passed away this month, and I want to pay tribute to that. But the other is her children, even though they're here, are living, and we're all cautious about mentioning living people. And actually, looking at some of the names coming from that area, I sort of recognize some of the family. Um, Aside from her father, well, I'll read this part. Aside from her father, she was predeceased by her husband, Briden, not me. The so interesting enough, um, and this is why we never assume things, and it's why I hadn't mentioned it until now. Ina Gale Nickerson, daughter to Frida Nickerson Mullen, and the late Edward Mullen. So Frida Nickerson had married Edward Mullen. Now, Ina's last name is Nickerson. So, was she born out of wedlock because her mother's maiden name was Nickerson? That would be a definite assumption that we could make, and it could be. However, I know the area, I know not necessarily this family, although as I read about her, I think I may. But she was married to Brian. Now, was she married to Brian Nickerson? I almost think I might know Brian Nickerson. I know a Brian Nickerson. The Nickerson is most likely her married name. Her maiden name was most likely her father, Edward Mullen. It was most likely Ina Mullen, married to Brian Nickerson. The fact that her mother, Frida's maiden name was Nickerson, if you're still following me, that's almost a tongue twister. It's a small community. So you have Mullins intermarrying with Nickersons. And then you have Mullins intermarrying with Nickersons, even though they might be third, fourth, fifth, even further cousins from that. I can tell you that because here in Nova Scotia, especially the Yarmouth end of Nova Scotia, where I'm from, it's going to sound pretty bad, but we come from a small gene pool where we had planters come in around 1760, where we had who we refer to as the Loyalists come in the around 1783. We had some early German immigrants, and so in this end of the province, you've got those three groups of people. So as it expanded out, you've definitely got cousins marrying cousins, and even though there's more people now than there were then, those family names, there's still cousins marrying cousins. But my looking at this obituary and knowing somewhat the local scene, I believe that this was Ina Mullen married to Brian Nickerson, and that Ina's father was Edward Mullen, and her mother was Frida Nickerson, and that probably she wasn't, as they used to say, an illegitimate child. It was probably just that her mother's maiden name was the same as her husband's. And that's just because I've done a lot of small community research, and also because I come from Yarmouth County and kind of know how the families work. But when I first read it, I was like, okay, well, Ina's last name is Nickerson. Her mother's maiden name is Nickerson. Is there more to that story? There is, but not the way that I wondered if it was. So it's another reason to take our time when we're doing research, to dig into the story and make sure that we don't jump to conclusions. And not that I did, but because that thought was in my head, I wanted to share that with you because it's. I just started out by going to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia obituaries and chose this one because I know that I tie into the Nickerson family, also tie into the Mullen family, distantly to both, but have ties to them. And so I found it an interesting name. And as I read the obituary, I think I may have known her. We probably may have possibly even gone to school together. I'm not sure if it says where she grew up, but because of her age and so on. And so it's just each one of these talks that I do on here is a little bit different. And so tonight is a good example of why we never want to assume, why we always want to read carefully, and of how you get started for free. Go into legacyfamilytree.com, get that standard edition database for free download. Go to familysearch.org, hit search, and then the records to find the information. The other free website I mentioned is findagrave.com. And on there you may find people who have died more recently than, say, 50 years ago, which on novascotiagenealogy.com, the provincial website, it has to be at least 50 years or they don't make it public. So it's kind of a way to get around that. And the other thing is just using Google with the short form word of obit and a person's name or even a community, and kind of looking there to see. And as I say, sometimes, especially for people who maybe don't know their family but come up with cousin matches, to start and do it that way maybe allows us to tap in and find people like people who have been adopted, people who can maybe tap into those obituaries, those family names, and okay, well, you know what? I've got a cousin match over here who's a Mullen, or I've got a cousin match over here who's a Nickerson, and kind of work different angles, different ways of doing research. So those are the ways that some of the ways that I work to find information. If there's anyone over on Wisdom that would like to join the conversation, has someone that you'd like for me to look for you, family or ancestry, or has questions or would like to join the conversation, please feel free to join the conversation. Hit that button. And over on Fireside for Gabrielle and Curdy, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. I'm going to wait a few minutes, but if not, I'm probably going to end the talk for tonight. I thank Curdy for coming up. Gabrielle, I appreciate you for sticking around. If you're curious, over on wisdom.app/Briden Farm, BRIDEN farm.com. Not.com, that's our website. Wisdom.app/Briden Farm is how you'll find us on the Wisdom app. Wisdom is also a free platform. And our website for our farming homestead here in Bear River, Nova Scotia, Briden Farm, BRIDEN farm.com. And for our Growing Your Family Tree, I have 2 books self-published on Amazon. One is Growing Your Family Tree, Sorting the Wheat from the Chaff. The other is From Irish Roots, which celebrates at least one or more parts, one part of my family. A few parts come from Ireland, but it celebrates that part. And also, I have the website growingyourfamilytree.com. So you can contact me any of those ways if you have questions. This has been my hobby and passion over the last 30 years. I really enjoy it. And if I can help others to get started or find the information that they're looking for, I love the challenge. I can't always find the information, but having 30 years of research history, I have a few tricks up my sleeve. So I don't see anybody coming up to the mic, which is not a problem. I appreciate you all, and I'm going to end the chat for now. Please do check out our websites, and if I can be of any help to anyone, that's what I'm here for.